In part 1 of this video, we looked at the rise of the Maya civilization. The history of the Maya civilization is divided into 3 principal periods: pre-classic, classic, and post-classic periods. The classic period was considered the heyday of the Maya, with many of the large monuments that still exist today being built in this period. Toward the end of the classic, the elaborate civilization of the Maya began to experience a number of problems. Notably, there was an increase in conflict, probably because of competition over scarce resources, culminating in a drastic reduction in population. The reason for decline in population is still the subject of debate amongst experts in Maya history today. What followed the classic period, however, is the mysterious collapse of the Maya in what is called the terminal classic period, 900 to 1000 CE. What we do know of the mysterious collapse is that the Maya abandoned their major infrastructure, the spectacular temples, pyramids, and palaces that were the hallmark of the classic period. At their peak, around 900 AD, Maya cities teemed with more than 2,000 people per square mile. This is comparable to modern-day Los Angeles County. Even in rural areas, the Maya numbered 200 to 400 people per square mile. Over the years, a few different theories have been put forward as to what caused the decline in population and the eventual collapse of the civilization. Experts have suggested that drought, deforestation, disease, overpopulation, and war may have impacted the Maya population. Most experts seem to agree that all of these elements had a negative impact on the Maya population, but in varying degrees. In 2009, Robert Griffin was part of a NASA-funded research paper investigating the Maya decline. He wrote that the Maya are often depicted as people who lived in complete harmony with their environment, but, like many other cultures before and after them, they ended up deforesting and destroying their landscape in efforts to eke out a living in hard times. A major drought occurred about the time the Maya had begun to disappear, and at that time of their collapse, the Maya had cut down most of the trees across large areas of land to clear fields for growing corn to feed their burgeoning population. They also cut trees for firewood and for making building materials. Veteran archaeologist Tom Sever wrote, "The Maya had to burn 20 trees to heat the limestone for making just 1 square meter of the lime plaster they used to build their tremendous temples, reservoirs, and monuments." He also went on to write, "We modelled the worst and best case scenarios, 100% deforestation in the Maya area and no deforestation. The results were eye-opening. Loss of trees caused a 3 to 5 degree rise in temperature and a 20 to 30% decrease in rainfall. Archaeological records revealed that while some Maya city-states did fall during drought periods, some survived and even thrived. The cities tried to keep an 18-month supply of water in their reservoirs," says Sever. For example, in Tikal, there was a system of reservoirs that held millions of gallons of water. Without sufficient rain, the reservoirs ran dry. Thirst and famine don't do much for keeping a populace happy. No single factor brings a civilization to its knees, but the deforestation that added to the severity of the drought could have easily exacerbated other problems such as civil unrest, war, starvation, and disease. Recent research suggests that the Maya suffered many droughts. The ones in the 9th century had certainly been severe, but a drought in the 11th century brought the worst drought the region had seen for 2,000 years, a mega drought. Drought was not totally responsible for the decline of the Maya. There is also evidence for diseases from Europe arriving in the area. These would have been brought into the area by Spanish explorers. Mayan writings record that tribal trade expeditions travelling by canoe had spread smallpox to the Yucatan Peninsula. In addition to smallpox, the Maya were also exposed to measles, mumps, and cholera. Dr. Tom Sever has also suggested that the Spanish may have deliberately tried to infect the Maya by sending infected slaves into cities and towns. As we learnt in part 1, maize was one of the core food sources of the Maya people. These crops were significantly affected by maize mosaic corn disease, which spread through crops rapidly. As corn plants mature and temperatures rise, mosaic symptoms often disappear and the young leaves become more yellow. Infected plants are predisposed to root rot and may be barren or have small ears with kernel abortion. While we may never know the exact details of the decline in the Maya population, there is evidence that contagious diseases, drought, and loss of crops has had a hand in the decline. The post-classic period comes to an end with the arrival of the Spanish conquistadors. The first encounter the Spanish might have had with the Maya may have occurred in 1502, when the fourth voyage of Christopher Columbus came across a large trading canoe off Honduras. In 1511, Spanish survivors of the shipwrecked Santa Maria de la Barca sought refuge among native groups along the eastern coast of the peninsula. Then, in 1519, Hernan Cortés, who was planning the conquest of the Aztecs, had made contact with two shipwreck survivors. These men who survived were Geronimo de Aguirre and Gonzalo Guerrero. These two men sought refuge with the Maya people and were sent as servants to separate Maya chiefs. Guerrero, due to his talents and his ability to adopt the Maya culture, was climbing the ladder and had worked up from slave to become a captain of the military forces of a Maya lord. He had also married the lord's daughter, with whom he had 3 children. Thanks to Guerrero, it was many years before the Spaniards could conquer the Yucatan Peninsula. He had trained the Maya soldiers with techniques, tactics, and military discipline used by the conquerors, with which they were able to defeat the Spaniards many times, thus keeping his family and the Maya people who had adopted him safe. In this way, forgetting about his king, his god, and his Spanish customs. Gonzalo Guerrero died in 1536, fighting alongside the Maya against his Spanish compatriots in a battle which took place near Honduras. The Spanish colonization of the Maya officially began in 1521, when Francisco de Montejo petitioned the King of Spain for the right to conquer the Yucatan. Spanish weaponry included all the latest modern fighting technology, such as broadswords, rapiers, crossbows, matchlocks, and light artillery. Maya warriors fought with flint-tipped spears, bows and arrows, and stones, and wore padded cotton armour to protect themselves. The odds were not fair, but the Maya were able to use their local knowledge and hit-and-run techniques to chip away at the Spanish fighting forces. It took the Spanish 170 years and a number of expeditions to finally subjugate the Maya people, much longer than their campaigns against the Aztecs and the Incas. The last Maya stronghold of Tayasal in Guatemala fell in 1697. Aiding in the Spanish conquest was the continuing transmission of European diseases which decimated Maya populations since they had developed no immunity. The primary goal of the conquistadors within the Americas was to locate vast quantities of gold and silver. Trace amounts of these precious metals were found that had been transported to the Maya kingdom via the various trade routes from Colombia and Ecuador, but the Spanish did not find the riches that they were hoping for. The Spanish colonization entailed forced labor and mandatory conversion to Christianity. Those Maya who refused to give up their pantheistic religious practices were arrested and tortured for heresy. Maya artifacts were actively destroyed, and all but a few of their sacred documents were burnt as pagan texts. Any of the larger monuments that were still being used were abandoned as the Maya population diminished under the pressure of disease and warfare. However, in 1820, the colonies broke from Spain and the pressure for the Maya to abandon their culture was gone. According to the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian, there are still around 7 million Maya living in the original homelands of Mesoamerica and in countries all over the world. Today, the descendants of the ancient Maya grow corn as they have done for thousands of years. They weave traditional clothes with ancient designs that reflect star patterns and their intimate relationship with nature. The modern Maya still use their sacred calendar for the well-being of their communities. The modern Maya are also active participants of the world. They are teachers, doctors, archaeologists, web designers, calendar day keepers, and more. Their culture is being preserved through language, tradition, and a deep connection with the land and sky. There is a quote on the Smithsonian website that explains the great sense of pride the modern Maya have in their ancestors. The Maya today, we are the direct descendants of our ancient culture, made up of expert builders, excellent astronomers, precise calendar keepers, and experienced artists. We give continuity to our traditions, our way of thinking, and our language, and we are worthy heirs of our origins. Visitors from all over the world travel to the ancient Maya sites to marvel at these ancient wonders. The culture of the Maya is alive and well, even in the 21st century. The Maya are one of the ancient civilizations that has definitely endured the pain of progress.